Once upon a time, in the busy and beautiful city of Oakhaven, there lived a merchant named Elias. Elias was not just rich, he was the wealthiest man in the entire kingdom. His house was like a palace. It had tall marble columns, floors made of smooth stone, and gardens filled with rare flowers that smelled like honey and vanilla. Elias wore clothes made of the finest silk, imported from faraway lands. On his fingers, he wore heavy rings of gold and ruby that sparkled in the sunlight. However, despite his beautiful home and expensive clothes, Elias was not a beautiful man on the inside. He was cold, proud, and very arrogant. When he walked down the street, people would bow to him out of fear, not respect. Elias would walk with his nose in the air, never looking at the poor people begging for food. "Why should I help them?" he would say to himself. "I worked for my gold. Let them work for theirs." He believed that money was the only thing that mattered in the world. He thought that because he was rich, he was better than everyone else. One autumn afternoon, Elias sat in his grand office. He was looking at a map of the ocean. He had a plan, a very dangerous plan. He decided to spend all his remaining gold to buy 3 large ships. He wanted to fill these ships with rare spices and jewels from the eastern islands. If the ships returned safely, Elias would become richer than the king himself. An old sailor who had traveled the seas for 50 years came to warn him. The sailor took off his cap and spoke quietly. "Master Elias," the sailor said, "please do not send the ships now. It is the season of storms. The gray clouds are gathering in the west. The sea is angry. It is too risky." Elias laughed loudly. The sound echoed off the cold stone walls. "Risk? I do not fear risk," Elias shouted. "I am Elias. Even the ocean knows my name. The storms will not touch my ships because destiny is on my side. Go away, old man. You are just jealous of my ambition." The old sailor shook his head sadly and left. Elias ignored the warning. He signed the papers and sent his 3 great ships into the dark, open ocean. For 2 weeks, Elias waited. He dreamed of the mountains of gold he would soon have. He planned to build a tower so high he could look down on the whole city. But one evening, the sky over Oakhaven turned a terrible shade of purple and black. The wind began to howl like a hungry wolf. Thunder shook the ground, and lightning cut through the sky. It was the worst storm the city had seen in 100 years. Elias stood by his window, watching the rain smash against the glass. For the first time in his life, he felt a small shiver of fear. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the air was heavy and silent. A messenger arrived at Elias's door. The messenger was wet, muddy, and trembling. He did not look Elias in the eye. "Speak," Elias commanded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Where are my ships?" "Sir," the messenger whispered, his voice breaking. The sea took them. All 3 ships. They smashed against the rocks. The spices, the jewels, the silk. Everything is gone. It is all at the bottom of the ocean." Elias stood frozen. His face turned pale. He had borrowed money to buy those goods. He had bet everything on this voyage. "Everything?" Elias asked, his voice barely a sound. "Everything, sir," the messenger replied. In one night, the man of gold had become a man of nothing. The news of the sunken ships traveled fast. By the next morning, everyone in Oakhaven knew that Elias was ruined. Suddenly, the people who used to smile at him stopped visiting. The friends who ate at his table and drank his expensive wine disappeared. They did not care about Elias. They only cared about his money. When the money vanished, they vanished too. Then came the debt collectors. They were men with serious faces and large books. "You owe a lot of money, Elias," they said. "Since your ships are gone, we must take your property." They took his furniture, his paintings, and his silk clothes. Finally, they took his house. The large palace with the marble floors was no longer his. Elias was thrown out onto the street with nothing but the clothes on his back and a pair of old boots. For the first time in his life, Elias was hungry. He walked through the market, smelling roasted chicken and fresh fruits, but he had no coins to buy them. He extended his hand to ask for help, but people looked away. They remembered how arrogant he used to be. "Why should we help you?" a fruit seller said. "You never helped us." Elias felt ashamed. He sat on a cold stone bench as the sun went down. He was lonely, miserable, and starving. Just as he began to cry, he smelled something wonderful. It was the smell of warm yeast and toasted flour. He followed the smell to a small, dusty shop at the corner of the street. It was a bakery. Inside, an old man with a white beard and flour on his apron was cleaning a wooden table. This was Silas, the baker. Elias walked in, looking at the floor. "Excuse me," Elias whispered. "I have no money, but I am very hungry. Can I have a piece of burnt bread? Anything?" Silas looked at the former merchant. He saw the sadness in Elias's eyes. Silas did not see a rich man or a poor man. He just saw a hungry human being. "I do not have burnt bread," Silas said warmly. "But I have fresh bread. Sit down. You can eat, but tomorrow you must work." The next morning, Elias woke up before the sun rose. It was still dark outside. Silas gave him an apron. It was rough and covered in white dust. "Baking is not easy," Silas told him. "It requires patience and strength." Elias had never done physical work in his life. His hands were soft. But now he had to carry heavy sacks of flour. He had to mix water and salt. Most importantly, he had to knead the dough. "Push and pull," Silas instructed. "You must be firm but gentle. If you are too angry, the bread will be tough. If you are too lazy, the bread will not rise." For the first week, Elias hated it. His back hurt. His arms ached. The heat from the oven was unbearable. He missed his soft bed and his servants. "I am a merchant, not a baker," he complained in his head. But slowly something changed. One day, Elias pulled a tray of loaves out of the oven. They were golden brown and smelled perfect. He broke a piece off and ate it. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. He realized that he had made this with his own hands. It felt different than buying things with gold. It felt like an achievement. As the months passed, Elias became stronger. He stopped looking down at people. When customers came in, he smiled at them. He learned their names. He gave extra cookies to children. He realized that the people of the city were not below him. They were kind, hard-working people. They shared stories and jokes. Elias began to feel a warmth in his chest that was not from the oven. It was the warmth of community. "You see, Elias," Silas said one day, watching him laugh with a customer, "gold is cold and hard, but bread is warm and soft. You can share bread. You cannot eat gold." Elias finally understood. He was poor in money, but for the first time he felt rich in spirit. 5 years passed. Silas, the kind old baker, eventually passed away peacefully. He left the small bakery to Elias. Elias was sad to lose his friend, but he promised to keep the oven burning. Elias worked hard. His bread became famous in Oakhaven. People came from all over the city, not just for the delicious food, but to see Elias. He was known as the kindest man in town. One afternoon, a young merchant entered the shop. The young man wore expensive silk and heavy gold rings. He looked at the bakery with a sneer, just like Elias used to do. "Give me your best bread, baker," the young man demanded without saying please, "and be quick. My time is precious." Elias smiled. He saw his old self in this young man. He selected a beautiful, warm loaf and handed it to him. "That will be 2 copper coins," Elias said. The young merchant threw the coins on the counter. "You must wish you were me," the young man boasted. "I have ships at sea. I have gold in the bank. I have everything." Elias looked around his small shop. He saw a mother sharing a bun with her child in the corner. He saw the sunshine coming through the window. He felt the flour on his hands and the peace in his heart. "I used to be you," Elias said softly. "I had ships and gold, but I lost them to find something better." The young man looked confused. "Better? What could be better than gold?" "A good night's sleep," Elias replied. "The love of friends, and the joy of making something useful for others. That is the true treasure. The young merchant walked away, confused. Elias watched him go, feeling sorry for him. Elias wiped the counter, hummed a happy song, and began to prepare the dough for the next day. He had lost everything, but in the end he had gained everything that truly mattered.